Rabbi Savanor, and I'm very, very honored to be asked to give kind of a tour on something that I never studied in university, but as a passion, I actually got to know. I'm just sharing my screen. Just make sure that, 1 second. Can you see now my screen?
Works perfectly. Works perfectly.
So I called it a virtual, let's say, Jewish focus. It would not be only Jewish in Greece, because most of the Jewish things in Greece basically were exterminated during the Holocaust. But so as Rabbi Savanor said, I'm today a tour guide in Israel, which is the biggest mistake a high-tech guy can do these days. You know, the high-tech in Israel is booming and tourism in Israel is dead. So you do some mistakes in life, but in general, I love what I do, and I came to become a tour guide as a passion. So I'm a tour guide in Israel. I do Japan because I was working a lot in my tech time in Japan, fell in love with Japan, and Greece is so near to Israel. So I fell in love in Greece because we share a lot of things together. So I'm going to go through a virtual tour, and starting the tour, I want to start with one photo. And this photo was taken in one of the only two synagogues that are now active in Greece. There is one in Salonika, which is this one, called Yad Le'zikaron, and there is one in Athens. There are some other synagogues that are active, but not every day. So there are only two that are active every day. And this is the synagogue in Salonika. I was with my wife in a weekend in Hanukkah 6 years ago, and we came to this 4 candle. I highlighted this is 4 candle of Hanukkah. And you know, for me, it was a little bit strange, although I've been to Greece many times. It was first time for me in Hanukkah. I know when I was born in Israel, when you celebrate Hanukkah in the kindergarten, and then they always mention that the Jews, the Maccabees, were winning over the Greeks. And my question is, did the Maccabees really defeat the Greeks in the year 164 BCE, like 2200 years before our time? It's not really the case, and I'll try to explain about that. So let's dive first of all, where is Greece? So this is the globe. And if you take a flight from North America, if you're in the East Coast, you will get there in about 8 hours. If in the West Coast, maybe 11, 12 hours. And you land in Athens. And Greece is located basically on the southeastern part of Europe, not far from Asia and Africa, and also not very far from Israel. If you continue from Athens with another flight, it takes about 1 hour and 40 minutes, you're in Tel Aviv. So this is where Greece is. Let's dive into...
Excuse me, Yona?
Yeah?
We just froze. We just froze for a moment. I don't know if it was you or us.
Okay.
And some
You're
folks...
the only one that froze.
Oh yeah, we were the only one who froze? All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
I got something in the chat. So let's keep going. Good.
Okay, so what I did right now is I'm now diving into Greece. So you see the circle, this is Greece, I'm diving in. So this is Greece in highlight, and Greece is located, Greece as a state today is within these borders. You see the green borders, this is the state of Greece, the modern state of Greece. And it's located in the south part of the Balkan Peninsula. And actually it has borders in the north with Albania, which is here, with North Macedonia. It's a disputed name until for the last 30 years, the Greeks and the country north of them were fighting how to call the country north of Greece. They want to call themselves Macedonia, but the Greeks claim that Macedonia is a reserved word for them. So the compromise that was just signed a few months ago was that this state will be called North Macedonia. And then we have Bulgaria, which is also in the north, and then we have Turkey. Turkey has kind of a short land border with Greece, and a long island border along the sea, because Greece, usually most people know Greece for its beautiful, islands like Mykonos and Santorini and some others for recreation, and not so many people they know Greece for its Jewish story. Now, as you can see here from this map, Greece is actually formed by 2 tectonic forces that the Asian plate and the African plate are colliding. This is what happens when two plates are colliding. There are a lot of mountains that are covered by the sea, so these are the islands. But Greece has a very big, very nice amount of a mainland. Now, I want to take you to a tour of about 5 to 7 days to go to Greece, and I would start my tour in coming in on this yellow arch to the city of Salonika. Here it's calling Thessaloniki or Salonika. By the way, there are no flights directly to Salonika from the North America, but you can fly from almost every capital in Europe and do a domestic one to Thessalonica. And I especially want to start in Salonika because this is the main story of the Jewish story in Greece. I will spend 2 or 3 days, or let's say 2 days and 3 nights in Salonika. And then I'll go for 1 night to the center of Greece, not for a Jewish story, but for a really beautiful place called Meteora. I will touch base on that. And then I'll cross the mountains here, the part of the Alps. I'll cross to the other side to a small town called Yanina, which has a very interesting Jewish story. And then I will take a domestic flight to Athens. It's about 1 hour flight. And I'll conclude my tour in Athens. By the way, it can be 5 to 7 days. If you want, you can continue to one of the resorts in the islands or in the mainland. And then you can either go back to the States or continue to Israel. This is the kind of a journey I want to touch base in the next about 35 to 40 minutes. So let's start to dive into all these locations. And I will start, of course, with Salonika. Sorry, before I dive into Salonika, I want to give you a little bit more about Greece. Few things about Greece, I'll go back. First of all, the flag of Greece is very similar to the flag of Israel. It's blue and white. But instead of Magen David, they have, of course, cross. And the meaning of their black and white, blue and white is different than our meaning. And the Greek meaning is basically it's the sea and the snow. Most of the mountains there in the wintertime are actually covered with snow. So these are where they get their blue and white. So let's go into a little bit about Greece in general. So the size of Greece, usually, you know, when I'm guiding in Israel, I say to people, Israel is like New Jersey in terms of size. So Greece is like New York, very similar in their size, about 52, 53 square millimeter. Population of Greece is a little smaller than New York. It's about 11.8 million people. By the way, there is a very big Greek diaspora. About 6 million Greeks do not live in Greece. They live in Australia, in North America, in some other European places. But so it's kind of very similar to the Jewish, that, you know, half of the Jews are in Israel and half are mostly North America. And the coastline of Greece is huge because of its shape of very, very kind of broken land and a lot of islands. They have a lot of beaches. This is why they attract so many people on vacation. Most of Greece is actually very mountainous. Some of their peaks in the center are around 8,000 feet above sea level. At the top, of course, is Mount Olympus, which is about 10,000 feet above sea level. And most of the Greeks they live along the coastline. About 3 million, about 1/4 of the Greeks, they live around the Athens metropolis. And the second largest metro in Greece is Salonika. That is going to be our main focus in this Jewish Odyssey of Greece. Now I warn you, it's going to be a timeline, and a timeline usually confuses people. So I just let you know in advance that I want to compare the timeline of Greece compared to the timeline of the Holy Land. Before I show the timelines, just look at the 4 colors. The 4 colors are Jewish is blue because of our blue color. Christian is like Red Cross. It's whenever Christians were controlling those lands. Islam is green because in Islam, green is holy. And polytheistic, like the Romans, the Hellenistic, I put for yellow. So here it comes. So on the left, this is the Holy Land timeline, who controls the Holy Land. And on the right, this is who controlled the land of Greece through history. I know there's a lot of names, a lot of information. Don't look into very deep. I want to highlight 4 specific times. So these are the 4 circles. So the bottom circles is the first time that the Greeks and the Jews in the Holy Land, they have a kind of a common umbrella or common empire that controls both. And this is the time of Alexander the Great, when the Greek are spanning out of Greece and conquering the entire Middle East and further all the way to India. And this is the first time in history that the people in the Holy Land and the people who live in Greece are under the same umbrella. Then, of course, we have 400 years that both Greece and the Holy Land, the land of Israel of today, are under the same Roman Empire for 400 years. And then we have the Byzantine Empire that lasted in Greece for 1100 years, but in the Holy Land only 300 years, because the Arab Muslims took over the Middle East, not all the way to Greece. So the Greek Byzantine period lasted much longer. We have here Crusader, but let's go to the last time that we shared the same rulers. These are the Ottomans. The Ottomans, the Turks, controlled the Holy Land for about 400 years, and they controlled Greece about very similar amount of time, few nice centuries. And these are the kind of things that are shared between us. You need to remember, it's only 1 hour and 40 minutes to fly between Athens to Tel Aviv. It's about 1,000 miles, and there is the same coastline of the Mediterranean. So this is the connection between the Holy Land and the Jews and the Greek location. So let's dive into two things. One, this guy in the center is a very famous mosaic floor from Pompeii depicting Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a very special person. You know, we always have in our mythology, Jewish mythology, that we won over the Greeks and we fought with the Greeks. If you ask the Greeks, they don't know about that, because unlike the Romans that destroyed our temple, and unlike the Babylonians that destroyed another temple, and they depicted it in big monuments in Rome or in Assyria, the Greeks, you know, when Alexander the Great took over the entire Middle East, and this is the empire of Alexander the Great. He came from Greece from here, and in 10 years he took over all the way to Egypt and went all the way through Persia, Iraq of today, all the way almost to India. And this he done in a very young age, in 10 years, and he died soon after. And by the way, according to the Talmud, there is some mentioning that he was actually very welcomed by the Jewish high priest at that time, Shimon. So we don't have really bad memories from the Greeks back then. So what is the story about Hanukkah and the Greeks? Look, this is the empire. What you see here is an empire that was established in 10 years by Alexander the Great. So how could he has done it in a short time? It's because he simply replaced the decaying Persian Empire. And an empire that collapsed, usually it collapsed very quickly. So once he took over and died, his replacers could not maintain the full empire. So very few decades after, and I'm talking Alexander the Great was 4th century BCE. I'm talking now in the 3rd and 2nd century BCE. It's the time of the story of the Maccabees. It's not anymore Greece. Greece is here, where Greece is today. What we have here Egyptians, Cleopatra, who actually were Hellenized. And we have here the Antiochus, who were actually Assyrians that were Hellenized. And we have here another Greek, his name is Cassander, who is Hellenistic by himself, but he controls only Greece. So we, in our history, the Maccabees are not actually winning over those Greeks, but actually they're in between two other Hellenistic forces. And eventually we got some kind of independence, which we celebrate until these days in Hanukkah. So it's a little bit a correction of some of the mythology of our understanding. So let's go and understand how Jews arrived to Greece through the history. And I'll put here kind of a flow chart, how Jews expanded from the Holy Land when Judaism was established in between Egypt and the Holy Land. At the year of the 6th century BC, when the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, Jews were exiled to Babylon, which is this, Babel. And some Jews escaped to Egypt. And those who escaped to Egypt, some of them crossed the deserts and actually created pockets of Judaism that were fossilized for a few thousand years. These are the Ethiopian Jews and the Yemenite Jews. Still, we are talking before the time of Alexander the Great. Only when Alexander the Great is taking over and making it one empire, Jews are starting to move, not because they were kicked out like by the Babylonians, it's because there are opportunities. And Jews are starting to move along the coast because it's part of a one big empire over a few centuries when the Hellenistic Greek Empire is replaced by the Roman Empire, Jews are arriving all the way to Rome and all the way to Carthage, which is in front of Rome. And this is the first expansion. We call those Jews that arrived 2,000 years ago, about 2,000 years ago to Greece, we call them Romaniyot. Romaniyot is a kind of Jews that have certain traditions that go back about 2,000 years. What's next? Next, we have Jews moving on to Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz is the center of Europe. It's in between Germany and France, and it's actually in the center of Germany. These are the Ashkenazi Jews. And then we have the Arabs conquering all the way to Spain. Jews are moving with the Arabs, not because they are pushed to go there, because there are good opportunities there. And these are the Sephardic Jews that are arriving to Spain. And we are following forward. We are talking about the 12th and 14th century. And there are a lot of crusades. Jews are pushed out from a lot of pogroms. So Jews are starting to expand to the east. These are the Ashkenazi expansion to Poland, to Ukraine, to Western Russia. And then we have the expulsion from Spain. In the 15th and 16th century, the Jews are being expelled from Spain, and there are Jews coming all the way to Greece. And actually, they are invited by the Ottomans. Back then, the Ottomans are controlling Greece. They're actually being invited, and many of them are being settled in Thessalonica that was quite empty back then. And then later on in the 17th century, some Jews coming from Ashkenaz. And so we have here in Greece, which is in this circle, we have Romaniyot Jews that are kind of very, very rooted Greeks already. We have the Sephardic Jews that bring their tradition, and some Ashkenazi Jews. It's a kind of a nice mix of different people. So this is about Greece. So let's dive into our tour that will start in Thessalonica, which is here in the north. Salonika. Salonika is a relatively new city. Not so new. Compared to Athens, which is more than 4,000 years, Thessalonica was established in a certain day in 315 BCE by one of the replacers of Alexander the Great. Actually, he was his brother-in-law because he was married to his sister, and the sister name was Thessalonica, Thessalonike. The name was given to Thessalonike from her father, Philip II, because he won over Thessaly, which is a region in Greece, and Nike means victory, so Thessalonike means the victory over the Thessalians. And he wanted to establish a new city in front of a bay. By the way, this is the icon of Salonika. It's called the White Tower. It's here on your left. It's like, as I explained to many people, this is like for us in Israel, it's like the Tower of David of Jerusalem. This is the icon of Thessalonica, like the Acropolis in Athens. So what is Thessalonica? Thessalonica is actually the port of the Balkans. It's a very large port for passengers, for goods. And Thessalonica has basically 4 different periods in its history. So it was established in 315, and it was Greek Hellenistic until about 150 years after, and then the Romans took over. The Romans controlled Thessalonica for about 500 years. This is an arch in the main street of Thessalonica built by one of the Roman Caesars called Galerius. And the one who replacing the Romans are the Byzantine. The Byzantine Thessalonica was for 1100 years. This is a church called St. Demetrius Church in the center of Thessalonica. And then the Ottomans came in, and the building that is called the Rotonda became a mosque. And then in 1912, Thessalonica was taken from the Ottoman Empire and joined Greece that was established 100 years earlier, about 90 years earlier. So this is Thessalonica of today. This is Greece. Greece is built out of regions. Macedonia, which is the region of north of Greece. This is why they were fighting with North Macedonia over the name. This is Thessaly, Thessalonica. This is the other region. This is the Peloponnesus. These are the islands. There are different islands. And where is Thessalonica? Thessalonica is actually a city that was built exactly in the middle between Rome and Constantinople, which is Istanbul of today. It's a kind of 2 main centers of the Roman Empire, and Thessalonica is really in the center in terms of the journey. And it's in the south end of the Balkan, which is the first big port taking into the Aegean Sea. This is the city of Thessalonica from Google Maps. This is the famous port. This is the passenger port and then the commercial ports. This is the city. And the city has, until today, it has Byzantine time wall. This is the dashed black line. Not all of it exists, but some of it still exists. And I want to take you to a 2-day tour. And in this 2-day tour, I marked here in yellow circles the Roman Hellenistic site that you should visit. I marked in red the Christian Byzantine site that I recommend to visit. And of course, the Jewish site that I marked, of course, in blue. So all the blue circles here, there are many. Unfortunately, many of them are memorials and not necessarily, big institutions. So let's do a tour. I suggest to spend 2 days in Thessalonica. I would allocate the first day to general and the second one to the Jewish. So the general will start from the north, which is the highest point for a lookout, go down to see some monuments, go all the way down to the White Tower. I'll go into that and I'll show you some examples. Go through the main churches and finish the day in a beautiful promenade. And the second day, I will focus on the Jewish area, which is mostly here. This was the Jewish quarter. And I put the walking mark like a zigzag, so it looks like a Magen David, because really everything here is in the corner of this Magen David. So let's dive into a few sites over this 2 days, full day's visit of Thessalonica. I will start from the north. From the first day, this is a beautiful view looking south. It's like, I was born in Haifa, and for me, it's like Mount Carmel. To stand in front on top of the Baha'i Gardens, there are no Baha'i Gardens here. What you can see from here, from far away, the White Tower. The White Tower, you can see zoom in, is popping out above the buildings here. The Rotunda, the big universities that is built actually on top of a very large Jewish cemetery. Then we have the port, the upper city, this area which is very near to on the slope of the hill. We have the port, and if you, in a good day, it was not such a day when I took the picture, if you look to your right, you see Mount Olympus. It's like if you're in Tokyo in a good day, you see Mount Fuji. So it's very, very similar. So if you go down from that point, which I like to do, is walking down all the way to the White Tower. It's really steep a little bit, but you can see the old Ottoman period houses, which are very unique. They have like a smaller first floor and bigger top floors, which allow much wider walks. So we are walking down this pathway, and we are going to arrive to this monument. This is like the Pantheon in Rome. It actually was built as a mausoleum by the Roman Caesar, but he was buried in a different place. And when the Byzantine took over, it became a church. And when the Ottomans took over, it became a mosque. And when the Greeks took over, it became a monument. So they use it sometimes as a church, but usually it's like a museum. So you can look at that. If I took a picture further down, if I look backwards, you can see the tower that I started the day with, and you can see the rotunda over here. Just near the rotunda, there is a very nice house, which is the house of a guy named Ataturk. It's Ataturk's home. Ataturk is the leader of modern Turkey. He was born in Thessalonica. He was born when Salonika was part of the Ottoman Empire. Today, this is the consulate of the Turkish consulate in Salonika, and it's also a museum. So you can come to the museum. He was born in 1881, died in 1938. By the way, in Salonika, this guy here named DBG, which stands for David Ben-Gurion, in 1911, he came to Thessalonica on his way to Constantinople and stayed 1 year in the city to study Turkish, which he knew Turkish, in order to study law. He didn't finish his studies because World War I stopped it, and later on he became the leader of the Jewish people in what then was Palestine, but he actually lived 1 year in Thessalonica. So I'm going further down, and I'll go all the way down to the White Tower. This is the famous White Tower. Why it's called the White Tower? It's an interesting story. Actually, it used to be a jail in the Ottoman time, and a lot of prisoners were killed and were executed in this tower. So the locals called it the Tower of Blood, or the Red Tower. So when Greece took over in 1912, they immediately painted it in white. Later on, the paint was removed, so you see the bricks, but the name White Tower is actually stay there, and this is the White Tower. By the way, it's located this picture I took from the top of the White Tower. It's on the east side of the main promenade, and the port is on the other side. And the port and the train station, I'll refer to that later on, because the train station, as you can imagine, has something with the Jewish said history of the city. By the way, you can look at the promenade from a hotel, which is a little bit further east. So this is the White Tower here. And you can see it from a hotel called the Macedonia Palace. It's a beautiful area. By the way, the city is not so big, and you can make everything almost on foot. So I just finished the first day. I didn't go into all the location of the first day because I want to focus now on the Jewish part, which is here. So Jewish Salonika. So Salonika used to be called by the Jewish people Jerusalem of the Balkan, or Madre de Israel Ladino. I can speak with you about scholars like Rabbi Shimon El-Kavetz, who later on ended in Tzfat, who actually created the Lecha Dodi, you know, the nice song that we sing on Kabbalat Shabbat. I can talk about Rabbi Yosef Karo that spent some time over there. I can talk about Shabtai Tzvi, who was a false messiah. I don't want to talk about that. I really want to talk about some other aspect of Salonika. Salonika at the end of the 19th century was a city with a Jewish majority, and it was a large city, not a shtetl. You know, there were many shtetls in Europe that Jews were the majority, but there were small shtetls. You know, Jews did their own things, and that's it. Here, Salonika was a city of almost close at some point to 200,000 people, where the Jews were the majority. So what happened with the Jews of the majority? You know, you need to do everything what a city should be running. For example, the port of Salonika used to be run and owned and operated by Jews, so it was closed on Shabbat. The firefighters organization, some of them were Jewish NGOs or guilds of firefighters. The big cemetery of this is the Rotunda, outside of the walls of the city was huge, 300 to 500,000 graves were there pre-Holocaust. And by the way, about 5 years ago, the city of Haifa, the state of Israel and Greece issued a joint stamp to share between Haifa port and Thessalonica port. And there is a connection because when Haifa port was built by the British and the Jews started to leave Greece, a lot of Jews that worked in the port of Salonika came to operate the port of Haifa and later on the port of Tel Aviv. So this is one of the story. Look, this is the population. It's kind of a schematic, but the blue is Jewish, the green is Muslim, and the red is Christian. The population of the Salonika from 1500 to middle of the 20th century. If you want to read a little bit more about Salonika, there are two books I can recommend. One is a history book by Mark Mazur, Salonika, City of Ghosts, and another one which is covering the entire Ottoman period. This is the Ottoman period. And another book is a fiction history book by Victoria Hislop, The Thread, which is talking about the 20th century. What you can see here, two things. Salonika became part of Greece in 1912, out of wars in the Balkan between the Greeks and the Bulgarians and the Turks. And then in 1923, there is a very big thing. There are no more Muslims. And why there are no more Muslims? Because there is a big catastrophe. There is a war, and the end of the war, I'll show you very soon, no Muslims left in the city. And half a century after, almost no Jews left in the city because of deportation to Auschwitz. And this is why most people do not know the story of the Jewish Salonika. Look, Salonika was a very cosmopolitan city in the end of the 19th century, early 20th century. There were 70,000 Jews in 1910, 35,000 Muslims, 30,000 Greeks, and 25,000 others, Bulgarians, Albanians, Romas, etc., etc. This is the city within the walls. And the Jews are living here close to the port in the center, Muslims in the upper city, and the Christians are on the sides, and the Jewish big cemetery is outside of the walls. But there is a big catastrophe at some point. In 1917, there is a big fire, and it started in the Muslim area, but because of the north wind took everything to the south, and most of the people who were affected by this fire were the Jews. 50,000 Jews became homeless in 2 days. And this was one of the first big catastrophe that led to immigration of Jews outside of Salonika, slowly. This is the big catastrophe that every Greek and every Turk know about. In 1922, of an agreement, 1.5 million Greeks were mobilized out of Asia Minor into Greece, and 500,000 of Muslim Turks were mobilized out of Greece into Turkey. It was one of the largest swap of population, agreed by the prime minister, sponsored by the British. They moved by foot, by sea, by train. There are quotes here about, if you read a book by Victoria Hislop, you can hear about stories that the Muslims are departing from their Jewish neighbors. They're leaving them some gifts. This is happening in 1923, and there no Muslims were left in Salonika. If you go to the catastrophe of the Jewish people, which I'll address later on, this is the deportation of Auschwitz in 1943. There were no Jews almost left in, actually only 2,000 Jews survived the Holocaust out of 50,000 that were pre-Holocaust in Salonika, because already dozens of thousands already left between early 20th century and 1941. By the way, this is a very interesting guy. It's the former mayor of Salonika. This is with a group that I came from Washington, D.C. Jewish Federation. He's not the mayor anymore, but he's the guy, a very interesting guy. He was very colorful. He's from a family that is making wine and alcohol. He was an alcoholist by himself, and he speaks about that. He has tattoos all over his body, but he's very liberal, and he actually claims that to bring back Salonika to what it used to be, Jews and Turks must come back and invest, enjoy, and be part of the city, because those two people that actually were eliminated in less than a century left Salonika very, very empty. So this is about the Jewish story here. Going to the Jewish story, there are many sites here. I'll just pick few. For example, I can dive into the market. It's called the Modeanu market. Eli Modeanu was a Jewish architect that actually designed this market after the big fire. Today, it's a very humble, by the way, Greece is very humble and simple. This market is now during COVID, they're actually renovating it. So it's now, I think it's closed. And this is how it should be looking very soon. Near the market, you have the current synagogue, the same synagogue that I opened my presentation. There is a Jewish museum nearby. This building in the background is the Jewish Hammam, it's called Yahud Hammami, the flower market. It's really in the center. By the way, this is a picture not from Salonika, it's from Tel Aviv. It's in the famous Levinski Market. This is Chaim Raphael Delicatessen. It's in Levinski Market, which is in the south part of Tel Aviv. There is a Greek family that moved this family did not move before the Holocaust. Chaim Raphael, who passed away 7 years ago, is a Holocaust survivor. And he passed the business to his son, Tzadik, and to his grandson, Chaim Raphael, and you can find Greek goodies in Tel Aviv. And Greek food can be like feta, yamista, and dolmades. It's really juicy. You can eat it in Greece or in Tel Aviv. I want to show you two more things. One is the only synagogue that survived Salonika is this synagogue. It's called Monastiriotes. It survived the Holocaust because the Nazis or the Red Cross used it as a warehouse. The other more than 30 synagogues were completely wiped out. So this is the only authentic synagogue that is still, it's not open on a daily basis, but if groups are coming or in a high holiday, it's active. You can come in, it's called Monastiriotes. Let's go and to see this area. This is a memorial that was it's called the Holocaust Memorial. It's the first memorial that Salonika put in the 90s. This is today it's a parking lot, but it used to be a big square called the Lefteria Square, or the Liberty Square. In the summer of 1942, 9,000 Jews, men, were actually gathered by the Nazis, were humiliated. 2,000 of them were taken to forced labor, and they were released only after the Jewish community sold the property of the cemetery to the city in order to develop it. And this is how some of those inmates were released. You can see the remains of this synagogue. There are two guys sitting on broken tombstones. Today, by the way, in the area of the big university that is built on top, they put this memorial was put here about 7 years ago. Last thing in Salonika that I want you to look is the train station. It's a very small building here. Today on the wall, there is a graffiti, which is very impressive. Very little is mentioned about the Holocaust in Salonika, but there is going to be a change. If you look on this building, this is an inauguration 3 years ago. The president of Israel here, sitting here, Ruby Rivlin, and this is Prime Minister of Greece. They are actually launching this building that looks like the White Tower, but on the other side, this is the train station where the Jews, about 50,000 Jews were deported to Auschwitz. in 1943, and this is going to be the memorial for the Holocaust in Salonika. And let me just do the summary, and this is the White Tower, and the title here is in Greek, Talemestin Evriki Thessaloniki, which means bye-bye Jewish Salonika. And I want to end with one poem that was written in Ladino. Ladino is the Yiddish of the Sephardic Jews. And it says, I'll read just the first phrase. En la mar hay una torre, en la torre una ventana, en la ventana una hija que a los marineros ama. And it means there is a tower by the sea. In the tower, there is a window. In the window, a young girl is calling to the sailors. And it's going on. And this is about the sailors, the Jewish sailors that are yearning for Salonika. So most of my speech was about that. I don't have much time left, so I want to dive very quickly. We can stop on the way in a city called Vera. It's 1 hour there is a synagogue over there, but I'll jump directly to Meteora, which I usually recommend to spend one night over there. This is also my background of my presentation. Meteora is these beautiful cliffs that look like they landed from space. This is why the name is Meteora. It's like the meteorite. This is bottom-up look. And this is from the above. What is special about those geological formation that on top of almost each one of them, there is a big monastery. Those monasteries were built firstly about 700 years ago. Some of them are still active. This specific one has a very Jewish connection. The connection is very, very awkward. This specific cliff was in the movie of James Bond, For Your Eyes Only. This is why my title, For Your Eyes Only. And the second actor to Roger Moore back then was Chaim Topal. And Chaim Topal was the one who played Fiddler on the Roof, the most famous guy. So we have some connection, Jewish connection to Meteora even. Then I'll go to the next spot, which is Yanina. And Yanina is beyond the mountains of the Pindos. Many times in the history, this part of Greece was not part of Greece. It was part of Rome or part of something else because the mountains are like a block. There's a nice lake beyond the west side of those mountains. And there is a peninsula here that is fortified by a wall. And inside that, there is a synagogue. And this synagogue is Romaniyot Synagogue. Unlike the synagogues that I showed you before, both Yad Le'zikaron and Monastiriotes that are Sephardic, because Salonika was completely covered with Sephardic Jews, and all the others actually were assimilated. In Yanina, there was a Romaniyot, a nice community until the Holocaust. There were 2,000 Jews left, and all of them were, beside 100, were taken to Auschwitz 1 year after Salonika. But this synagogue is active, not every day. You can call Miss Allegra Matza, and she will actually open and explain to you about this synagogue. Today in Yanina, there are not so many leftovers from the Jewish community there. There are few dozens of Jews living there. There is one memorial just outside, not far from the walls, and there is another memorial in the cemetery. And by the way, this is the mayor of Yanina. He's a Jewish guy named Mosses Elisat-the. The picture was taken in Athens, but he's the mayor of Yanina. Although there are only about 50 Jews in Yanina out of maybe 20,000 people living there, but he was elected as a mayor. The last stop, because before we conclude, is Athens. Athens doesn't have a lot of Jewish history, but the largest Jewish community today in Greece is in Athens. In Salonika today, there are less than 1,000 Jews. In Athens, more than 2,000. All in all in Greece, we have about 5,000 Jews. This is Acropolis at night from one of the hotel's roofs. This is Rabbi Gavriel Nagrin. He's 31. He became the chief rabbi of Athens in the age of 25. He's Romaniyot. And this is in a Romaniyot synagogue called Etz Chaim, which is not an active one. He's in the premises of the Jewish community of Athens. In front of it, there is a Sephardic synagogue called Bet Shalom that was built in the 30s, and this one is active on a daily basis. And he's the rabbi of both, by the way. He's a very, very moderate guy. He studied in Israel to be a rabbi, but he didn't bring the hardcore of, this harshness of the ultra-Orthodoxy. He's an Orthodox guy, but they're very moderate and very welcoming. Just near those synagogues, about 11 years ago, the Holocaust Memorial of Greece was put here like a Magen David, broken to 6 pieces. with a center. Each piece is pointing to another area of Greece, and all the names of the communities that were impacted by the Holocaust is there. There is a Jewish museum in Athens, which is a very nice one. So I recommend to go there. It's in the center of Athens. And I think we did a quiet run. I call this speech a tour of a mainland, a Jewish Odyssey in mainland Greece, because most people do not know the mainland. I can tell you that there were Jewish story also in the island of Rhodes, an interesting story about the island of Zakynthos, where the local priest was actually saving a lot of Jews. He's righteous among nations. Here, Zakynthos is on the other side. So I just did only a 5 to 7 days tour in the mainland Greece. Let me just conclude my speech in a few things. First of all, pre-COVID in Greece, they got 35 million tourists visiting Greece annually. It's huge. In Israel, for example, 2 years ago, we had a peak, which was 4.5 million. And we're talking about huge amount of travelers. Mostly are coming to the islands between April to October. And the other time, Greece is quite empty. Mainland Greece has a lot to offer. It's nature and outdoor. It can be archaeological and historical sites, from the classic Greek and Roman periods to Byzantine beautiful churches. And as you saw, Meteora also embedded with very nice geology. And there is a hidden and almost forgotten Jewish story. And this Jewish story is a blend of a Romaniyot, Sephardic and Ashkenazi streams. Salonika was the largest Jewish city with Jewish majority in the world in the 19th century. There was no other big city above 100,000 people that had Jewish majority. And this was the only city in the world that had Jewish majority. So Jews there had to do with everything, not only with their own things, but also with the down-to-earth things. And there's a very big tragedy that this story is not so much known, and because most of that community was wiped out at the Holocaust. And thank you very much for listening. And I wish you to come and keep on traveling either to Israel or to Greece or Japan. I'll be happy to share with you more information. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Yes. Oops. Hold on one sec. So first of all, thank you very much. I mean, this was really amazing and also concise and clear, and it's always wonderful to hear a presentation where you're left wanting more. So this was really excellent. And so let me begin with that. First question I just want to ask you is, let's go back to the fire in Salonika. Do they know what caused the fire?
There are a lot of conspirations. If you go to the book of Victoria Hislop, it talks about a barn that is in the basement of a building. In August, the temperatures in Salonika can be like above 100 with a very strong north winds called Maltemi and dry, and some sparks from cooking, from chalk of cooking, fell through the cracks into the barn and was set it into fire, and then it was like a blaze. Now, Salonika had many fires in its history. There was a big fire in 1894, I think, that also many people, but the biggest fire was 1917.
So the fire didn't begin in the Jewish quarter, but because of the wind, as you mentioned, it sort of made its way and wiped out a lot of the Jewish quarter. Was there a thought that it might have been put there on purpose, or it was an accident?
As far as I know, most people think it was an accident because it happened many times, because it's very easy to occur.
Yeah.
But again, as I told you, there are conspirations that the Jews did it, because we are talking here at a time which is at the beginning of the rule of the Christians, of the Greek Christians. It's 5 years after Thessalonica joined Greece. And there is a change of atmosphere in the city. And the fire was one big event, and the second 6 years after the fire, all the Ottomans, all the Muslims were kicked out of the city. So there are a lot of conspiracies that I heard that someone did it deliberately. As far as I know, the common thinking is that it started around here. And this is north coming south from the Muslim area to the Jewish area. And the Jews, by mistakenly, it was on the path of the spreading of the fire. By the way, today, if you want to see authentic Salonika, it's this area. The upper city is very authentic because it was did not damage. All this area was rebuilt, except some area near the port that was also not damaged. So the damage is the black area. The port area was not damaged as well. So if you travel today, if the port looked like maze, this looked like a maze, and this looked like a grid because it was rebuilt and replanned.
Right. Another question that came up is you mentioned that Aristotle University is built on outside what had been the walls on the Jewish cemetery. So how does the current population, I guess, how aware are they of that? And the other thing is there an effort to keep the memory of the cemetery alive, as well as the memory of that vibrant Jewish community?
Okay, so by the way, there was not only Jewish, this is the Jewish cemetery. If you can see my pointer, it's over here, and the university is built on most of it. There was also a cemetery here, which is a Muslim cemetery above it, also built by some other things. It was very neglected. Actually, only in the last years, the recent 2 decades, there is more activity to find, because we can find tombstones that were secondly used in buildings, in paving, inside the city and in the university area. And the reason I mentioned the former mayor, Yanis Voutaris, because he's the one who actually got a lot of criticism from the right wing in Salonika, from nationalists, why he's bringing back Jews and Turks. And he's the one who actually decided to build here in this location here, exactly here, the monument that I told you about, that looks like a broken menorah on the part of this cemetery. Now, not on all the area, there are buildings, there are some parks and gardens of the university, but the university is the largest university in the Balkans. They have more than 100,000 students, 100,000 students in this university. It's a very large university. I think that most, the one who actually, as far as I know, who brought more awareness on that, and he's the one who actually was driving the new Holocaust memorial, the one that looks like the White Tower, is the former mayor, Yanis Voutaris. And I met him with several delegations, one from New York, one from DC. He's very welcoming. Of course, he wants also philanthropy to get your money to help to build it, but he's really doing it from his, because he thinks this is the right thing to do.
Great. Let me ask you just in terms about the integration of the Jewish community before the war. So did Jews go to their own schools, or did Jews and non-Jews go to school together?
So the Jews, let's talk even at the end of 19th century to early 20th century, the Jews were like handling, if you read the book of, the history book of Mark Mazur, actually the Ottomans gave autonomy to every ethnic and religious group. Every ethnic and religious group has its own autonomy. The Jews that had their autonomy, they were subdivided because many of them there were about 40 synagogues in Salonika, end of 19th century, and many of them were called by name from the city that they came from, Spain, 400 years before. So there was the one from Toledo, the one from, forgot all the names. So there were a lot of tradition within the Jewish people. But yes, they manage their schools. They had the Talmudei Torah of their own, the synagogues of their own, judges or dayanim of their own. Yes, they had their own life. Things started to change when Salonika became part of Greece. Actually, in the early 20s, when the Muslims were kicked out, it was decided that the holy day for the city is Sunday, and Sunday all the shops should be closed. Now, before that, the port used to be closed on Shabbat. Now, you cannot close on Shabbat and on Sunday, so eventually they start to open on Shabbat and close on Sunday. And gradually, you start to feel that the Muslims were first to be kicked out, and then the Jews were started to be pushed out gently because of nationalism and because a lot of refugees, Greek refugees, Christians arrived from Turkey to Thessalonica. So the Jews that used to be majority became like a smaller minority within this population.
Somebody put into the chat that they had heard that the Jews of Greece, Salonika, if they didn't have access to the trains that the Nazis wanted to use to ship them out to Auschwitz and other places, had to row to the train stations themselves. Is that accurate? Is that true?
Okay, the train station, if you look at the map, the train station here, by the way, the train was built by the Jewish philanthropist named Baron Hirsch. He was the one who funded this train in the 1870s. So it has the Jewish connection. And nearby this train station, there was a neighborhood that was built in the fire of 1894 that's called the Hirsch neighborhood. The Nazis came into Salonika in 1941. And for 2 years, Jews were actually living where they lived. They had to be marked. They had limitations. They had a lot of issues, but they still lived in the city. Only in March 1943, all the Jews had to leave to the ghetto. The ghetto was this Hirsch neighborhood that was built, that is just near the train station. And from April 43 until August, in 19 transports, the Jews of Salonika were shipped to Auschwitz, most of them. By the way, those who had a French citizenship, they were sent to Bergen-Belsen. That was kind of easier. There were some benefits. But those who arrived to Auschwitz, not so few of them, actually many of them were taken to be the Sonderkommander in Auschwitz for two reasons. One, because many of them dealt with the port. So they were strong and, not the regular Jews from the shtetl, but really working Jews, so they can do the dirty work of Sonderkommander, which is taking the body out of the gas chambers. And also they didn't speak Yiddish, so they could not really talk and warn those new shipments that are coming from Hungary about their destiny is going to happen, and in order not to create a panic. So the Nazis were very smart to use those Greek Jews, and many of the survivors actually passed all that. They were Sonderkommander, they got it to 2, the number, and they went back to Salonika after the war. Those who survived completely scratched. And when they came back to Salonika after a few years, their property was taken, like what happened to the Polish Jews that returned from Russia. So it's a very, not so many Jews, or even those 2,000 that actually came back to Salonika, many of them left either to the States or to Israel. I saw another mentioning in the chat. I just took a look at the chat. Yes, in New York, there is a synagogue called Yanina Kahal Kadosh Synagogue, and there is one also in Jerusalem, by the way, near the Machne Yehuda Market, which is also a Romaniyot synagogue from those who left Yanina.
So let me just ask you, this is the easy question, and I have a hard question for you, because I want to, because first of all, I know you can handle it, because your presentation was amazing. The easy question is, if we were to walk into a Romaniyot shul, synagogue, either in Athens or in New York or wherever it would be, what would be 3 differences that you would want us to know about the Romaniyot minhag or their shul, or how, or anything about the Romaniyot, a few things that we should know?
Wow, this is the easy one? You're the rabbi. I am completely secular guy. As far as I know, first of all, is the language. They will speak Greek. Okay. I know that there are nuances and differences in the order of things that they do. I'm not sure what are they. But at the end, Torah scrolls and the prayers are similar. It's like, nuances that I cannot really, I'm not into the details. And sorry that I cannot explain about them, but it's like when I'm going here to the Sephardic, although I'm an Ashkenazi, it looks quite familiar, but different. I cannot put the finger on 3 specific ones. The language is for sure one of them.
Okay, so there would be some Ladino. We have actually Beverly Levy wrote here that the cooking, so what we would eat at the Kiddush would be a little bit different.
No, Ladino is Sephardic.
So it would be a Greek version of Ladino. Okay, there'd be a little thing there going on there. And we also have in the chat here directly to me that Beverly Levy wrote, married with a talus over the heads of the bride and groom. I think this is fertile ground. And I wrote Carol Freeman wrote, no, not a Greek version of Ladino. But I imagine there must be a Greek, Hebrew, something going on. But if not, I'm wrong and we'll look into it. But I wrote a paper 30 years ago when I went to Hebrew U about the Romaniyot Jews. And I know that there's, I know that there's a Judeo-Greek, which is what Carol Freeman just wrote into the chat. And I believe the Romaniyot Jews also have a special like mini festival on Sukkot, which anyway, it's very fertile ground for us. And actually your program today, we have a lot of people connected to the Greek Jewish community. Let me end with the question that I think is the harder one, or maybe you could just, you can, mention a little bit, which is how, I know that Greek and Turkey and Israel, there's a geopolitical situation there. Maybe you can just give us, what are the headlines of things we need to know about that relationship and the conflict thereof?
Okay, so first of all, the story of Greece being a modern state was a 100 years of what we call Greek liberation, started in the south of Greece, and every few decades they took over more and more out of the Ottoman Empire. It was a very bloody one that ended with the Big Catastrophe, because to finish this 100 years of brutal war between Greeks and Turks, they decided on swap of population. And this swap of population unrooted people from Asia Minor that were Greeks for 3,000 years history, that Greeks were living in Asia Minor, went to Greece, and vice versa. 500 years that Ottomans lived in Greece moved to Turkey. This actually made the relation between Greece and Turkey, that both are in NATO, in a very strange way. On one hand, they have peaceful agreement, but they have very, very strong bad blood still between them, and the friction, on the sea. If you go to Athens or to Salonika and you want to fly to Istanbul, you don't find a flight because it's not called Istanbul, it's called Constantinople by the Greeks. So this is the relation between Greece and Turkey. Now, how Israel fits into the story. Until 15 years ago, Israel had very good relations with Turkey and not good relations with Greece. Actually, Greece had relations with Israel only in the 80s, very late in the game. Actually, they voted against the partition plan in 1947. And the reason is because, I didn't speak about it, but there was a very brutal civil war in Greece after World War II between communists and nationalists, that United States of America actually supported the nationalists, and the sentiment of the people was with the communists. And when the nationalists won and America won, America was for most Greeks like hated people. And Israel, that was actually always teamed with America, was the little hated people. And because the Greeks had a lot of feeling that they are the underdog, they tend to sympathize, until 10 years ago, with the Palestinians. When the rift between Israel and Turkey came in, and a lot of Israel stopped traveling to Turkey and start moving by the people to Greece, and Israelis love Greek music, and we start to flood Greece because it's really very near us. And the Greeks start to know Israelis, and the politics, the general politics, when we do not like the Turkish, so we need to team with someone else. We start to team. I'm talking about politics and air maneuvers by the air forces. We start to become friendly with the Greeks, but both by the people and by the governments, and things change completely because of regional geopolitics. So this is, I think, the full picture of the relation, the triangle between Turkey, Greece, and Israel.
Well, thank you. I want to conclude by thanking you again for a wonderful presentation. I know there's more to say on Crete and also Rhodes and some of the other communities, and that means we're going to have to welcome you back. And I think we'll have to welcome you back at some point to also hear about Japan. And Because it's that must be such an interesting story, and we look forward to it. I want to thank everyone for being here today, and we got a lot of requests for recordings of the program. Ari will send that out with a bunch of links, and I also I want to thank people for adding so much to the chat, and we had a lot of people here with connected to the Greek Jewish community and Greek Jewish blood in them. And I just want to say one thing, which is, as we remember the Shoah and remember, the Holocaust, there are not just 6 million people whose stories we may never hear. There are communities that we might have not heard of as well. And so programs like this remind us of centers, vibrant centers of Jewish life that for some of us are about history, and for others of us, it's part of who we are, part and parcel of who we are. And so I'm so glad this program got such a wonderful response. And today, the Jews of Salonika, hundreds of us are thinking about them and remembering their robust contribution to the story of the Jewish people and the tapestry of Jewish peoplehood. And I want to thank you, Yona, for making this all really come alive for all of us here today. And we can't wait to see you again soon. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And we look forward to seeing you soon. And all the best.
תודה רבה, להתראות.
להתראות. Bye-bye. Evcharisto, which means thank you.
Parakalo.
Pakalo in Greek. All right, my friends, take care.